The massive crystal palace floated in the dark void at the center of the galaxy, spinning slowly like a giant jewel. Inside its gleaming halls, thousands of alien beings from across the stars had gathered for their most important meeting in centuries. The air buzzed with excited chatter in hundreds of different languages, but they all shared the same smug confidence. Admiral Velthar stood at the center of the great chamber, his tall blue form commanding attention from every corner of the room. His four golden eyes studied the holographic image floating before them, a small, unremarkable blue and green planet orbiting a yellow star in one of the galaxy's forgotten outer arms. "Look at this pathetic world," Velthar said, his voice dripping with disgust. He waved one of his 6 arms at the display, causing ripples of laughter throughout the assembled aliens. "These creatures call themselves humans, and they think they deserve a place among us." The hologram shifted, showing crude, human spacecraft that looked like metal boxes welded together by amateur engineers. Smoke and strange vapors leaked from their engines, and their hulls were covered in primitive antenna arrays and sensor equipment that any civilized species would have outgrown millennia ago. Councillor Kixara floated forward, her purple tentacles writhing with amusement. Her species had mastered space travel when humans were still discovering fire, and the thought of these newcomers claiming equality was absolutely hilarious to her. "I've seen their so-called warships," she gurgled, her voice creating bubbles in the translation field around her. "They fire chunks of metal at each other, like ancient siege weapons. No energy shields, no plasma cannons, no quantum torpedoes. Just primitive projectiles that any decent deflector system could stop with ease." Another council member, an insect-like being covered in shimmering scales, clicked his mandibles in agreement. "Their ambassadors came to our last trade meeting wearing fabric clothing. Fabric, not even basic bioarmor or environmental suits. They're so primitive they don't even understand basic protection protocols." The laughter grew louder as more aliens shared their observations of human inadequacy. They had been watching Earth for several decades now, ever since these upstart mammals had stumbled upon faster-than-light travel through what could only be described as blind luck and stubborn determination. "They discovered warp drive by accident," scoffed Admiral Velthar, bringing up another hologram showing early human exploration ships. "Their first expedition got lost for 3 months because they couldn't figure out how to navigate between star systems. 3 months! My people mastered interstellar travel in 3 days." The assembled council members nodded and chattered their agreement. In their view, humans were nothing more than aggressive barbarians who had gotten lucky with one piece of advanced technology. Their ships were slow, their weapons were weak, and their entire civilization was built on a foundation of violence and chaos that had no place in the ordered galaxy they had spent millions of years perfecting. "The question before us today is simple," Velthar announced, his voice echoing through the crystal chamber. "Do we allow these primitives to continue their stumbling expansion through our space, or do we put an end to this embarrassment before it gets out of hand?" The vote was swift and unanimous. Every single member of the Galactic Council raised their appendages, tentacles, claws, or energy fields in agreement. The humans had exactly 7 standard days to accept their ultimatum, surrender their independence, submit to alien authority, and accept their role as a worker species in the galactic hierarchy. If they refused, the combined might of 1,000 civilizations would turn their little blue world into cosmic dust. "Send a single corvette," Velthar ordered casually, as if discussing the weather. "One ship should be more than enough to terrify them into submission. I doubt they'll even try to resist once they see what real technology looks like." The council dispersed, already planning how to divide up human territory and resources among themselves. None of them suspected that their supposedly primitive targets had been listening to every word of their secret meeting. Captain Do-hyun stood, perfectly still on the command deck of humanity's most advanced orbital defense station, his dark eyes fixed on the approaching alien vessel. The massive structure around him hummed with hidden power, its true capabilities carefully concealed beneath layers of deliberately primitive-looking outer plating. To any outside observer, it appeared to be nothing more than a basic monitoring station cobbled together from scrap metal and outdated technology. Lieutenant Hee-jin looked up from her control console, her fingers dancing across holographic displays that showed far more sophisticated readings than any alien would expect humans to possess. Her brow furrowed as she analyzed the incoming ship's approach vector and energy signatures. "Captain, this is almost insulting," she said, shaking her head in disbelief. "They're not even bothering with basic stealth protocols. No jamming, no cloaking, not even encrypted communications. They're broadcasting their approach on every frequency like they're announcing a parade." Do-hyun's lips curved into a cold smile that never reached his eyes. He had been waiting for this moment for over a decade, ever since he first learned the truth about humanity's real relationship with the galaxy. His hands remained clasped behind his back as he watched the alien corvette drift lazily toward their position, its crew probably laughing about how easy this mission would be. "Though of course they're not hiding," he replied quietly. "In their minds they're dealing with cavemen who just learned to bang rocks together. Why would you sneak up on ants when you could just step on them?" The alien ship docked with their station, using crude mechanical clamps, the kind of technology most species had abandoned centuries ago. Do-hyun could almost hear the alien crew chuckling to themselves as they prepared to deliver their ultimatum to the terrified human primitives they expected to find. When the airlock hissed open, a tall figure materialized in the center of the docking bay. The alien envoy was exactly what Do-hyun had expected: arrogant, dismissive, and completely unprepared for what he was about to discover. The creature's multiple eyes swept the room, clearly looking for signs of fear, confusion, or the kind of desperate pleading that inferior species usually displayed when confronted by their betters. Instead, the envoy found Captain Do-hyun waiting with his arms crossed, flanked by 24 human officers whose calm confidence was the first hint that something was terribly wrong. "Welcome to Earth," Do-hyun said in perfect galactic standard, his pronunciation flawless despite the aliens' belief that humans could barely grunt out basic words in their own language. The envoy's confidence flickered for just a moment before he composed himself. "I bring greetings from the Galactic Council and terms for your species' integration into civilized society." Do-hyun activated a holographic display with a casual gesture, and the alien's words died in his throat. The projection showed detailed technical schematics of Galactic Council warships, complete with weapon specifications, shield frequencies, and structural weak points. But that was just the beginning. "Mokari Heavy Cruiser, Class 7, Do-hyun," said conversationally, pointing to one of the ship designs. "Plasma cannon arrays here and here, shield generators located in the forward section, and a critical vulnerability in the engine cooling system that can be exploited with a precisely targeted kinetic strike." The hologram shifted, showing patrol, routes, supply lines, and even recordings of private council meetings. The envoy watched in growing horror as his own species' most classified military secrets were displayed casually before him. "We've been studying you for over 100 years, Do-hyun continued, his voice never rising above a conversational tone. "Every probe that accidentally crashed on our worlds, every scout ship that went missing in our system, every piece of debris you thought was safely scattered across space, we collected it all." The alien's skin color began shifting through several different shades as the full implications hit him. "Impossible. Your species barely achieved spaceflight 50 years ago, your primitives, barbarians with stolen technology." Do-hyun's smile grew wider and significantly more dangerous. "That's exactly what we wanted you to think. While you were congratulating yourselves on discovering the violent little humans, we were reverse engineering your technology, infiltrating your networks, and learning everything there was to know about galactic civilization." The envoy stumbled backward as more holograms appeared, showing human agents operating deep within alien society, advanced manufacturing facilities hidden throughout human space, and weapon designs that combined the best of dozens of different alien technologies into something entirely new and terrifying. "You thought you were the teachers," Do-hyun said softly. "You were wrong. The Galactic Council had given humanity exactly 7 days to respond to their ultimatum. For 3 of those days, there was nothing but silence from the small blue world. On the galaxy's edge, No desperate pleas for mercy, no frantic diplomatic messages, no signs of the panic and terror the Council had expected to see from a primitive species facing extinction. On the fourth day, the stars above the Council's crystal citadel simply went out. It started as a shadow, darker than the void of space itself, slowly blocking out the distant suns one by one. At first, the alien sensor operators thought it was some kind of natural phenomenon, perhaps a rogue asteroid or a cloud of cosmic dust drifting through their system. But as the darkness grew larger and more defined, they began to realize that something impossible was happening right in front of their eyes. The shadow had a shape. It was 3 kilometers long, nearly half a kilometer wide, and it was moving with purpose toward their most heavily defended position in the galaxy. Emergency alarms began blaring throughout the citadel as panicked technicians tried to understand what their instruments were telling them. "Sir, we're detecting massive energy readings, but the object isn't showing up on any of our scans," reported a trembling communications officer to Admiral Velthar. "It's like it exists and doesn't exist at the same time." Velthar's 4 golden eyes narrowed as he stared at the view screen, watching the impossible shadow drift closer to their position. "Activate all defensive systems. Send an identification request. If they don't respond within 30 seconds, open fire." But before anyone could follow his orders, every communication channel in the system suddenly crackled to life with a single human voice that spoke with calm, terrifying confidence. "Attention, Galactic Council," Admiral Jinwu's voice echoed through the crystal halls of their citadel and across every ship in their fleet. "You demanded an answer from Earth. Hear it." The shadow suddenly blazed with light as massive engines came online, revealing the true shape of humanity's response. The battleship Vengeance materialized from its stealth field like a monster emerging from a nightmare, its hull a twisted fusion of technologies that should never have been combined. The ship's design violated everything the aliens thought they knew about physics and engineering. Its armor seemed to bend light around it, creating optical illusions that made it difficult to focus on or target properly. Energy conduits ran along the outside of the hull in patterns that hurt to look at, carrying power loads that should have melted any known material. Weapon mounts jutted from the ship at impossible angles, their barrels crackling with energies that registered on sensors as several different types of exotic matter simultaneously. "By the void," whispered Captain Minho as he stood beside Admiral Jinwu on the Vengeance's command bridge, watching the alien fleet scramble to respond to their arrival. "Look at them panic. After all their talk about superior technology and advanced civilization, they can't even figure out how we got here." Jinwu nodded, his eyes fixed on the tactical display showing dozens of Council ships moving to intercept them. The aliens were brave, he had to give them that. Even faced with something completely beyond their understanding, they were still prepared to fight. "They're forming attack formations," reported the ship's tactical officer. "Looks like standard Council doctrine. Surround the target, overwhelm with numbers, and pound it into scrap metal. Let them come," Jinwu replied calmly. "They need to understand what they're really dealing with." The Vengeance simply hung in space, not moving, to evade or retreat as the alien warships closed in around it. Its weapons remained powered but silent, giving the aliens time to position themselves exactly where the humans wanted them. On the Council citadel, Admiral Velthar watched his fleet surround the human ship and felt a moment of satisfaction. Whatever impossible technology these primitives had stumbled upon, they were still outnumbered 50-1 by the finest warships in the galaxy. "All ships, open fire," he commanded. That was when the demonstration began, and the galaxy learned why you should never underestimate an angry human with something to prove. The Makari attack fleet was the pride of the Galactic Council's military forces. 12 massive heavy cruisers, each one stretching over a kilometer in length and armed with enough firepower to turn an entire planet into molten glass. Their hulls gleamed with the dark purple metal that had made the Mokari Empire feared across 100 star systems, and their energy shields shimmered like soap bubbles around each vessel. Admiral Velthar watched from his flagship's command center as his fleet moved into perfect attack formation around the strange human vessel. His tactical officers had spent years perfecting this maneuver, a classic encirclement pattern that had never failed to crush any enemy stupid enough to face them in open combat. "All ships report ready for engagement," announced his weapons. "Officer," her voice filled with the confidence that came from commanding overwhelming firepower. "Target is completely surrounded. They have nowhere to run." On the bridge of the Vengeance, Captain Minho stood with his hands clasped behind his back, watching the alien ships position themselves exactly where he wanted them. His face showed no concern about being outnumbered 12-1. If anything, he looked slightly bored. "Sir, they're charging their main weapons," reported his tactical officer. "Standard plasma cannons, nothing we haven't seen before. Should I activate our defensive systems?" Minho shook his head slowly. "That won't be necessary. Let's show them what real weapons look like." The Mokari fleet opened fire first, sending dozens of brilliant energy beams lancing through space toward the human battleship. The aliens expected to see their target shields flare and collapse under the concentrated assault, followed by the satisfying sight of hull plating vaporizing under their continued bombardment. Instead, something impossible happened. The energy beams simply curved around the Vengeance like water flowing around a stone, bending away at angles that violated every law of physics the aliens understood. Some of the shots seemed to disappear entirely, vanishing into folds in space that shouldn't have existed. "What in the void is that ship made of?" gasped Admiral Velthar, his four eyes wide with disbelief. Captain Minho didn't even bother with conventional weapons for his response. The Vengeance fired exactly once, a pulse of pure gravitational force that rippled through space like a stone dropped into still water. The lead Mokari cruiser, a vessel that had survived battles with entire planetary defense fleets, suddenly began to crumple inward as if invisible hands were crushing it like an empty can. The massive warship's hull buckled and folded, its kilometer-long frame compressing into a sphere of twisted metal and superheated plasma in less than 3 seconds. Then the gravitational field reversed, and the compressed remains exploded outward in a brilliant flash that lit up half the star system. "Impossible," Admiral Velthar whispered, his voice barely audible over the screaming alarms filling his command center. "Gravitational weapons of that magnitude would require the power output of an entire star. How are they—" His words were cut off as a beam of pure plasma curved through space in a path that made no logical sense, bending around his flagship's shields as if they weren't even there. The beam seemed to fold through dimensions that the Mokari didn't even know existed, striking his ship's main reactor with surgical precision. One by one, the pride of the Mokari fleet was systematically destroyed, each death more impossible than the last. Some ships were torn apart by weapons that fired backwards in time, hitting them before the Vengeance had even targeted them. Others simply vanished, erased from reality by technologies that operated on principles the aliens couldn't begin to comprehend. Lieutenant He-Jin monitored the enemy communications from her station on the Vengeance's bridge, her expression growing colder with each desperate transmission she intercepted. "Captain, they're broadcasting surrender requests on all frequencies. Some of them are begging for mercy." Captain Minho's smile was colder than the void between stars. "They had their chance to show mercy when they gave us that ultimatum. Tell them it's too late for surrender. Within 8 minutes, 12 burning." Wrecks drifted silently through space where the Mokari fleet had been. The most advanced warships in galactic history had been reduced to cosmic debris by weapons that shouldn't have been possible to build, operated by a species the aliens had dismissed as primitive barbarians just days before. Across the galaxy, 1 billion different species watched the recordings of the battle and felt a chill run through their souls as they realized the terrible truth. Humanity had been holding back, and this was just the beginning. After the devastating battle at the Council Citadel, the Vengeance simply disappeared. One moment it was there, its massive hull casting shadows across the wreckage of the Mokari fleet, and the next it had vanished without a trace. No energy signature, no warp trail, no indication of which direction it had gone. It was as if the ship had never existed at all. The Galactic Council's emergency session was filled with panic and confusion. Representatives from dozens of species shouted over each other, demanding answers that no one could provide. Their most powerful fleet had been wiped out in minutes, by weapons they couldn't understand, deployed by a species they had written off. As harmless primitives, we need to mobilize everything, declared Councillor Zephyrin, his insectoid form trembling with rage. Every ship, every weapon, every soldier in the galaxy. These humans must be crushed before they can strike again. But even as the Council made their plans, reports began flooding in from across their territory. The first incident happened just 3 days after the battle, a mining operation in the Kepler sector that simply stopped responding to communications. When a patrol ship arrived to investigate, they found nothing but empty space where a massive asteroid mining platform should have been. The pattern continued over the following weeks. Research stations would go silent overnight, their automated distress beacons the only sign that anything had been there at all. Patrol fleets on routine missions would check in as normal, then never be heard from again. Supply convoys would disappear between star systems, leaving no trace except scattered debris that told no story about what had destroyed them. Commander Sujin sat in Earth's primary military command center, a facility buried 3 kilometers beneath the Sahara Desert that didn't officially exist on any human government records. Banks of holographic displays showed the chaos spreading across the galaxy as Council assets vanished one by one. The Zelani Home Defense Fleet just went dark, she reported to Admiral Jin Wu, who stood studying a tactical map of the entire galaxy. That's the 5th major military installation this week. They had over 200 ships protecting their homeworld. Jin Wu nodded grimly. The Zelani were one of the oldest and most militarily advanced species in the Council. If their entire home fleet could be eliminated without sending so much as a distress signal, it meant the Vengeance was performing even better than he had hoped. "Any survivors?" he asked. "A few," Sujin replied, pulling up another display. "The pattern is always the same. A ghost ship appears from nowhere, strikes with impossible weapons, then vanishes before any reinforcements can arrive. The survivors all describe the same thing. A massive vessel that seems to bend light around itself, firing weapons that don't behave like anything in known physics. The few aliens who lived through these encounters told stories that sounded like nightmares. They spoke of energy beams that curved through space in impossible directions, of gravitational weapons that crushed ships like tin cans, and of a vessel that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once. Most disturbing of all were the reports of the ship's ability to appear and disappear at will, striking from angles that should have been impossible. But the real shock came when a Council intelligence vessel was captured intact near the ruins of a destroyed research facility. When human technicians cracked its encrypted databanks, they uncovered files that sent waves of terror through every corner of galactic civilization. The computer systems contained detailed records of human activity, dating back over 50 years, not the crude, bumbling exploration efforts the Council thought they had been observing, but sophisticated intelligence operations carried out by agents who had been living among alien populations for decades. Council Admiral Kren Tal, a veteran, commander with over 2 centuries of military experience, stared at the files in growing horror. Names like Tai Ho, listed as a primitive human trader in Council records, were revealed to be deep-cover operatives who had mapped every major military installation in Mokari space. Yunji, supposedly a cultural exchange student, had spent 15 years gathering detailed intelligence on Council communication networks and command structures. "This is impossible," Krental whispered as he scrolled through page after page of human infiltration records. "These files show they've been operating throughout our territory since before we even knew they existed. They know our fleet positions, our defense plans, our supply lines, our communication codes. They know everything." The scope of human intelligence gathering was staggering. Every major species in the galaxy had been thoroughly infiltrated, their military secrets stolen, their weaknesses catalogued, and their leaders studied in minute detail. What the Council had interpreted as random encounters with curious human explorers had actually been carefully planned reconnaissance missions. "We're not fighting an invasion," Admiral Krentol said quietly, his voice filled with the terrible realization of just how badly they had underestimated their enemy. "We're fighting an extermination that's been planned for half a century. Across the galaxy, the hunt continued, and humanity's prey was running out of places to hide. Terror spread through the galaxy like wildfire. Within days of the intelligence, files being decrypted, every major civilization began pulling their fleets back from the frontier worlds, abandoning colonies and outposts that had stood for thousands of years. The ancient hyperspace trade routes that had connected distant worlds for millennia went silent as merchant vessels refused to leave port, too afraid of encountering the phantom human warship that could appear anywhere without warning. The Galactic Stock Exchange crashed as panicked investors realized that their most secure military investments were worthless against an enemy that could make entire fleets disappear. Planets that had never known fear in living memory suddenly found themselves building underground bunkers and stockpiling weapons that everyone knew would be useless against human technology. On the crystal spires of New Atlantica, the Aquarian, Council held emergency sessions around the clock, trying to coordinate a response to a threat they barely understood. Representatives from species that had been bitter enemies for centuries suddenly found themselves sitting at the same table, united only by their shared terror of the humans. The Mokari Empire has lost contact with 17 core worlds, reported Ambassador Velcris, his usually proud voice reduced to a frightened whisper. Not destroyed, not conquered, just gone. No distress signals, no final transmissions, nothing. It's like entire solar systems are being erased from existence. But perhaps the most chilling message came from the furthest reaches of known space, from a species that had remained hidden from galactic politics for over 1,000 years. The hive world of Craxis was home to the Gen, an ancient race of collective consciousness that had withdrawn from all contact with other species after some terrible trauma in their distant past. Queen Mother Genda, speaking for the first time in a millennium, sent a message that froze the blood of every being who heard it. We remember them. In our deepest genetic memories, passed down through countless generations, we remember the humans. They are the ones our ancestors fled from in the dark time before the Great Exodus. They do not make war for territory, or resources, or even survival. They make war for the pure joy of perfect destruction, and they are very, very good at it. The fire message sent shockwaves through the archaeological community as researchers began frantically searching through ancient records and ruins on worlds across the galaxy. What they found was far worse than anyone had imagined. Human settlements were discovered on planets that had been listed as uninhabited for centuries. Massive industrial complexes, hidden in asteroid fields and dead solar systems, had been producing weapons and ships for decades. Entire star systems that appeared empty on every galactic survey were revealed to be bustling with human activity, their presence concealed by technology that made them invisible to alien sensors. Captain Yun Seo, of the Altarian Deep Space Command, stood in his species' primary intelligence center, surrounded by holographic displays showing human installations scattered throughout what they had thought was their own territory. His 8-legged form trembled as he realized the scope of the deception. "This changes everything," he said to his assembled staff, his voice barely above a whisper. "Look at these locations, they're not random. Every single human outpost is positioned to cut off our supply lines, monitor our fleet movements, or strike at critical infrastructure. This isn't exploration. It's a military occupation that's been going on for 50 years. The evidence was overwhelming and terrifying. Every friendly human trader who had visited alien worlds, every cultural exchange student, every diplomatic mission, all of it had been carefully orchestrated intelligence gathering. The humans had studied their enemies with the patience of scientists and the ruthlessness of predators, learning every weakness and cataloging every strength. "Sir," reported his intelligence officer, her voice shaking, "we've found human listening. Posts monitoring our most classified military communications. They've been intercepting our strategic planning sessions for decades. Every defensive position, every fleet deployment, every new weapons development, they know about all of it." The fake. Worst part was the realization that humanity had never intended to join galactic civilization as equals. They had been planning to replace it from the very beginning, using their reputation as primitive newcomers to mask a systematic campaign of infiltration and preparation that spanned generations. Across the galaxy, species that had ruled the stars since before Earth's sun was born, suddenly found themselves reduced to frightened children, hiding from monsters they had foolishly awakened. The age of galactic peace was over, and humanity was just getting started. The hunters had become the hunted, and their new predators were patient, intelligent, and absolutely merciless. The single battleship Vengeance had been terrifying enough to send shockwaves across the entire galaxy. But it was just the beginning of humanity's revelation. What the aliens had witnessed was not Earth's ultimate weapon, but merely a taste of what was coming. Deep in the void between star systems, where no alien sensors had ever thought to look, space itself began to ripple and tear. The darkness came alive as hundreds of massive shapes emerged from hiding places that shouldn't have existed. Stealth, fields that had concealed entire fleets for decades, suddenly deactivated, revealing the true scope of humanity's military preparation. 1,000 ships materialized from the cosmic night, each one a unique nightmare of human engineering that defied every principle of known physics. These weren't crude copies of alien technology. They were something entirely new, born from decades of studying and improving upon the designs of 100 different species. Admiral So Young stood on the bridge of the dreadnought Retribution, watching her fleet assume formation around her 4-kilometer flagship. The massive vessel existed in a state that hurt alien minds to contemplate, partially in normal space, partially in dimensions that other species couldn't even perceive. Its hull seemed to shift and blur as if the ship was constantly moving between different realities. "All weapon systems online," reported her tactical officer. "Reality anchors are holding steady. We're ready to demonstrate what happens when human creativity meets unlimited resources." Nearby, Captain Junho commanded the carrier Nemesis from a bridge that looked more like a biological organism than a mechanical construct. His ship was a living factory, constantly birthing swarms of self-replicating drone fighters that learned from every encounter and shared their knowledge with the entire swarm. Each battle made them smarter, faster, and more deadly. "Drone production at maximum capacity," Junho announced over the fleet communications. "We're releasing the first wave now. Each unit is programmed with the combat data from our previous engagements. They know exactly how to kill every major alien ship design in the galaxy." Admiral Jinwoo's voice echoed across the human fleet from his command ship, the massive dreadnought Destiny. His words were broadcast on every frequency, ensuring that both his own forces and the approaching alien armada would hear them clearly. "For over a century we have watched from the shadows," he began, his voice calm but filled with absolute certainty. "We have studied your technologies, learned your tactics, and discovered your weaknesses. We have played the role of primitive newcomers, while secretly building the most advanced military force the galaxy has ever seen." The human fleet spread out across the Nexus system, a carefully choreographed dance of destruction that placed each ship in the perfect position to maximize the coming carnage. These weren't random arrangements. Every formation had been planned and practiced in secret training exercises that the aliens never knew existed. "Today, we stop pretending to be students," Jinwoo continued. "Today, we become your teachers. And the lesson is simple. Never underestimate a species that has spent its entire history perfecting the art of war." The Galactic Council had managed to assemble the largest fleet in recorded history, ships from over 100 different worlds, representing the absolute pinnacle of their combined military might. 3,000 vessels of every size and design, crewed by the finest warriors, and commanded by the most experienced admirals in known space. They still outnumbered the human fleet 3-1, a fact that gave many alien commanders confidence. Despite the terrifying reports they had received about human capabilities, Captain Aira, commanding the stealth frigate Shadow, smiled as she watched the alien fleet approach. Her ship was invisible to every sensor system the Council possessed, capable of phasing through solid matter and striking from angles that geometry said were impossible. "All units, this is Shadow," she broadcast to the human fleet. "Enemy formation is exactly as predicted. They're using standard Council tactics from their training manuals, the same manuals we've been studying for 50 years. They have no idea what's about to hit them." The alien fleet opened fire first, sending thousands of energy beams and missile salvos racing across space toward the human ships. It was an impressive display of firepower that should have been enough to vaporize any enemy force. Instead, the human vessels simply weren't there when the weapons arrived. Ships that had been clearly visible moments before seemed to slip sideways through space, avoiding destruction by moving through dimensions that the aliens didn't know existed. The battle that followed lasted exactly 6 hours and 17 minutes. When it ended, the wreckage of 3,000 alien ships drifted silently through the Nexus system, while the human fleet remained completely intact. The galaxy had new masters, and they had arrived with a message written in fire and blood. The age of humanity had begun. The great crystal chamber of the Galactic Council had never been so quiet. Where once 1,000 voices had filled the air with arrogant chatter about humanity's primitive nature, now only the soft hum of emergency life support systems broke the silence. Most of the Council representatives were dead, their ships reduced to glowing debris in the Nexus system. The few survivors sat in stunned silence, staring at the holographic projection that had appeared at the center of their chamber. Admiral Jin Woo's image stood calmly before them, his human fleet visible through the chamber's transparent walls as 1,000 deadly silhouettes against the stars. The man who had just orchestrated the complete destruction of galactic civilization's military might look remarkably peaceful, as if he had simply finished a routine training exercise rather than the most devastating battle in recorded history. The irony is not lost on me, Jinwoo said, his voice carrying easily through the chamber's acoustics. Just days ago, you sat in these same seats and offered my species a choice: surrender and become your servants, or face what you called pacification. Now I stand before you with the same offer. Behind him, the human fleet maintained perfect formation, each ship a testament to decades of careful planning and technological advancement. The aliens could see weapons that bent light, hulls that existed in multiple dimensions, and energy signatures that their sensors couldn't even classify. Captain Do-hyun stepped into view beside the Admiral, his uniform now bearing the insignia of humanity's newly formed Galactic Navy. The same man who had welcomed the alien envoy to Earth with such calm confidence now represented the power that would reshape the galaxy. The first option is simple submission, Do-hyun explained, his tone businesslike and matter-of-fact. Your species will become protectorates under human authority. Your worlds will be administered by human governors, your resources will serve human interests, and your people will find new purpose serving our expanding civilization. In return, you will be protected, fed, and allowed to maintain your basic cultural practices. The surviving council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The idea of proud species that had ruled the stars for millions of years becoming subjects of the primitive humans was almost too humiliating to consider. Admiral So Young's hologram appeared beside Jinwoo, her expression as cold as the void between stars. The second option is extinction, she said simply. We have demonstrated that we possess the capability to eliminate any species that opposes us. If you choose defiance over submission, we will systematically destroy every world, every ship, and every trace of your civilization's existence. This is not a threat. It is a statement of fact. The chamber filled with frightened whispers as representatives from dozens of species tried to process what they were hearing. These humans, who had seemed so weak and disorganized just weeks ago, were now offering them a choice between slavery and death, with the casual confidence of beings who had absolute power to enforce their will. But Admiral Jinwoo raised his hand, and the whispers died away. However, there is a third option. Some among you have shown qualities that humanity respects: courage in battle, tactical intelligence, and the ability to adapt to changing circumstances. These species may earn the right to stand beside us as allies rather than beneath us as subjects. The Admiral's expression became almost approving. Prove your worth through combat, demonstrate your value through service, and show us that you can learn from your mistakes. Those who do will be offered positions as junior partners in humanity's new galactic order. You will retain significant autonomy, maintain your military traditions, and have the opportunity to participate in the conquest of other galaxies. Before Jinwoo had even finished speaking, a massive figure rose from the council seats. War Chief Graktar of the Krexani warrior clans, his scarred body bearing the marks of 100 battles, stepped forward with the steady gait of a professional soldier recognizing superior force. "The Krexani have fought the humans," he said, his gravelly voice filled with genuine respect rather than fear. "We lost, but we learned. Your species has mastered warfare in ways we never imagined possible. We choose to learn from the apex. Predators, teach us your methods and we will serve with honor." His words seemed to break the spell that had frozen the other survivors. Within minutes, the chamber erupted into frantic discussions as species representatives debated their options. Some chose immediate submission, terrified of the consequences of resistance. Others defiantly declared they would rather die than serve human masters. But a surprising number followed the Krexani example, recognizing that humanity offered something no previous galactic conqueror ever had: the chance to learn from the victors and earn a place in their war machine through demonstrated competence. Within 6 hours, the galaxy's new political structure had taken shape. The weak had surrendered, the proud had chosen death, and the wise had earned their place at humanity's side. The age of human dominance had officially begun. 5 years had passed since the galaxy learned to fear the sound of human voices speaking across the void. The great crystal citadel that had once housed the arrogant Galactic Council now served as the administrative center for humanity's new Terran hegemony, its halls filled with the efficient bustle of a truly functional government. Admiral Jinwu stood on the bridge of the Vengeance, the same ship that had first demonstrated humanity's true power to the galaxy's former rulers. But now the massive battleship served a different purpose, flagship of humanity's exploration fleet, preparing to carry the human way of war to galaxies that had never heard of Earth. Through the ship's massive viewports, he could see the orbital training facilities that surrounded the citadel. Thousands of alien cadets moved through combat exercises designed by human military instructors, learning the brutal efficiency that had made their new masters the undisputed rulers of known space. The sight filled Jinwu with quiet satisfaction. These weren't slaves being forced through meaningless drills. They were volunteers who had earned their place through demonstrated courage and intelligence. The galaxy's finest warriors, learning to think and fight like humans. Captain Minho approached across the bridge, his footsteps echoing in the vast chamber that had been designed to accommodate alien physiology but now served human purposes. In his hands was a datapad containing the reports that Jinwu had been waiting for. "Sir, the Andromeda expedition is ready for departure," Minho announced, his voice carrying the confidence of a man who had helped conquer an entire galaxy. 30 ships of the newest design, mixed human and alien crews, complete deep space, exploration and conquest package. We've got enough firepower to pacify a dozen civilizations. Jinwu nodded approvingly as he reviewed the fleet composition. Each ship represented the perfect fusion of human tactical thinking and the best technologies they had stolen, studied and improved from hundreds of different alien species. The vessels waiting in formation around the citadel were more advanced than anything the previous galactic civilization had ever dreamed possible. "Excellent," he said. "It's time to see what our neighboring galaxies have to offer. The Milky Way was a good practice run, but I suspect the real challenges are waiting for us out there." Commander Haye Jin approached from her station at the intelligence console, her uniform now bearing the distinctive insignia of humanity's Naval Intelligence Division. The same woman who had monitored alien communications during their first contact now oversaw spy networks that stretched across multiple star clusters. "Sir, our long-range reconnaissance probes have confirmed at least 3 major galactic civilizations in Andromeda," she reported, her smile carrying the cold satisfaction of a predator who had spotted new prey. "Initial analysis suggests they're all significantly more technologically advanced than anything we encountered here. Some of their energy signatures are off the charts." Jinwu's eyes lit up with genuine excitement. The conquest of the Milky Way had been almost disappointingly easy once humanity revealed their true capabilities. The thought of facing opponents who might actually provide a decent challenge was genuinely thrilling. "Outstanding," he replied. "We were starting to get bored with easy victories. It'll be good to have enemies who can make us work for our wins again. Deep in the lower sections of the Citadel, the real work of building humanity's new order continued. Former Council Admiral Velthar, the same being who had once dismissed humans as primitive barbarians, now served as one of humanity's most effective tactical instructors. His classroom was filled with a mixed group of alien officers, Krexani warriors, Mokari strategists, Zalani engineers, and dozens of other species who had earned their place in humanity's military through demonstrated competence and absolute loyalty. "Pay attention to this next lesson," Velthar said, his 4 golden eyes sweeping across his students with an intensity that would have been impossible when he still believed aliens were superior to humans. "This is the fundamental principle that separates human warfare from everything you thought you knew about combat." He activated a holographic display, showing human battle tactics from their conquest of the galaxy, each engagement a masterpiece of strategic thinking that had left alien commanders helpless to respond. "Most species make war to achieve specific goals," he continued, his voice filled with the reverent fear of someone who had learned to truly understand their conquerors. "Territory, resources, revenge, defense, there's always some practical purpose behind the violence. But humans are different. They make war to prove that they can win. They fight not because they need something from you, but because defeating you demonstrates their superiority." The alien students took notes frantically, desperate to understand the mindset that had allowed a supposedly primitive species to conquer beings who had ruled the stars for millions of years. "And here's the truly terrifying part," Velthar added, quietly. "In all of galactic history, in every conflict across thousands of different worlds, humanity has never encountered an enemy they could not eventually defeat. Not once. They always find a way to win, no matter how impossible the odds appear." Across the galaxy, on worlds that had once been the proud capitals of ancient empires, similar lessons were being taught. The species that had survived humanity's rise now served their new masters with a mixture of fear, respect, and genuine admiration for the strategic brilliance that had made their conquest inevitable. They whispered humanity's name in tones that bordered on religious worship, speaking of their human overlords as forces of nature rather than mere biological beings. The galaxy had learned the ultimate truth about the species from the small blue world. When humans reached for the stars, they didn't bring civilization with them. They brought evolution, and everything that couldn't adapt would be left behind.